by certain inspirations that they heard during the day-long event. So then Conscious Conversations was born, and we wanted to bring together a TEDx message and an opportunity for you to have a breakout room and discuss what was invoked in you. So just a couple of things before we get started and before I introduce my partner and my TEDx extraordinaire. I would like to just mention that everybody on this call will be muted until we get to the point where we are in our breakout rooms. At that time, you will all be unmuted and you will be able to have a conversation. When we get to the piece within our evening this evening where there is an opportunity to ask questions, I would ask that each one of you go into your chat box and ask that specific question or comment, and that will be relayed to the speaker and they will respond. So I think that's pretty clear in terms of how the actual Zoom call will go for all of us this evening. So let's get started first by just the idea that right now we are in a place of tremendous change. In fact, your life does not get better by chance. It actually gets better by change. And each and every one of us have been called to this place of having to make drastic changes. There was an article in the Toronto newspaper by a fellow named Jackie Dunhart. And he wrote an article that there has been 1,000 new words that have been invented as a result of the coronavirus. So as you walk down the street, just remember that at some point you probably will be doing a corona dodge, which means you are going to be waltzing all over the place, just to make sure that we all keep safe together. The other word that came up that I thought was very interesting, which I had never heard before, is the idea of a locktail hour, which is a cocktail hour in lockdown. So if any of you have not had an opportunity to do that, maybe you could try. And most importantly, if you're ever on a Zoom call and all of a sudden you're gone or everybody else is gone, that terminology is that you have been zumped. Now, I want to tell you tonight that that won't happen to you. We will all be here together. So as we move through this evening, as we remain in what we call our growing edge right now together as a global family is that we don't even know what the edges look like. And so hopefully this evening, I know for sure this evening, that each and every person will have an opportunity to experience a different perspective around this thing called change. I'd like to actually ask Noel now just for a moment to speak a little bit about the power of three, because he is working with me and we work together, Conscious Conversations and the Power of Three. I know that you wanted to just say about, just a few moments about what the power of three is before we move into our actual speeches. And Noel is on. And as he moves, just remember you can also do the Corona waltz, which means you do the 1, 2, 3 step as you're walking down the street. You can do that. That's always a fun thing. And there you are.
And there I am, Janet. Thank you. Yeah, just very briefly, it's great to work with Janet, and the power of three is the idea that a single speaker can do a lot, but three speakers talking to one topic or one idea can mean so much more, especially when they bring a broad perspective. And so when Janet brought up Conscious Conversations, I said, I got an idea. I think we should work together. And now I think we're on our 7th iteration of this here. We've spoken outside at Semyamu House. And it's spilled over into TEDx as well. So it's it's been a fantastic experience, and we hope that we can just grow it from here. And with that, I just wanted to pass it back to you, Janet.
Okay, here we go. So right now, we have the great opportunity to hear a most special person in my life and in the lives of everyone she meets. She definitely is a heart-centered person. And I met Vindy because she was also a TEDx speaker. She has got a wonderful way of hacking into happiness. She is a proud single parent. She is a professional life and divorce coach and author, and a graduate of UBC and the Western Law School. She followed her call to the bar, and Vindy also discovered her coaching passion at that time. The result of some serious joys and successes. She also has dealt with many serious setbacks and challenges, and that word called doubt. The result, a book called YOLO, Essential Life Hacks for Happiness. It is a practical and meaningful dive into the deconstructing of happiness and an anthology of beautiful words and moments around happiness. She also has a second book coming out in May, and that book is co-authored. It's an anthology called Passed Down from Mom, a collection of inspiring stories about moms and motherhood. And if you want to find out about Vindy's books and what she is doing on that realm, there will be an opportunity in the chat box for you to get that information should you like to connect with her afterwards. But in the meantime, the topic is change, and this is her talk title. Change is inevitable, except from a vending machine. And now, Vindy Tasia.
I think everybody can hear me. I hope everybody can hear me. Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you for that lovely introduction, Janet. I'm honored to join you. So a few years ago, I adopted the title of this talk as a personal philosophy. Change is inevitable, except from a vending machine. We've all probably had that experience at least once, probably more, of being denied change by the vending machine. I refuse to feed it anything bigger than a toonie. I'd rather go hungry, thirsty, or snackless than risk losing a $5 or $10 bill to the vending machine. Of course, I adopted this saying not because of my diehard convictions about vending machines, but because of the first part. Change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. The proof of this is not only everywhere in my own life, but of everyone around me. There have been so many changes, I couldn't possibly list them all, but here's a Coles Note sampling. Unmarried to married, big hair to tamed hair, back to big hair, student to employee, lawyer to legal career developer, untraveled to traveled, to married with child, pregnant to loss of pregnancy, married to divorced, financially secure to insecure, back to secure again, mother to personal trainer, life and divorce coach, healthy to health scares, dark hair to gray hair, back to dark hair again thanks to L'Oreal. Change. It's all change. Some have been fabulous, exciting changes, others surprising, shocking, and really hard to navigate. Some have lost their significance for me, or I just can't remember them because I haven't been taking my memory supplements. The point is, my life's been characterized by a ton of change, as I'm guessing many of yours have been too. Change is inevitable. The acceptance of this statement alone was liberating. As a goody two-shoes brought up in a fairly traditional home, who drank about 75% of the Kool-Aid, I'd been conditioned to believe that it was if I was a good girl, went to school, became a professional, worked hard, got married, took care of myself, had kids, took care of those around me, the odds were that I'd fare really, really well. And I did. And I don't regret any of those things, though I could have fought a little bit harder to go to school dances and the movie theater. But things certainly didn't go the way I expected or planned. And often a lot of the things were out of my control. So the question for me became, if change is inevitable, then what? It's not a matter of if it was going to happen. It became a question of when or how will it happen? And more importantly, and something I had way more control over, how am I going to deal with change? And how can I prepare for change internally and externally? To borrow an analogy from my personal training days, I concluded that it's like a muscle. The more I exercise it, the stronger it becomes, and the more weight it can handle. Technique is also key. How to exercise my change muscles without injuring myself needlessly, or at least repeatedly. After navigating a ton of change in a short period of time, I realized I had received a tuition-free change management training. Within the space of about 4 years, in my late 20s and 30s, I lost my father prematurely to pancreatic cancer. I persevered through multiple fertility treatments and finally had my amazing daughter, who's now a teen. I was fortunate enough to get pregnant again, only to lose that pregnancy halfway through. And then a short while after that, got hit with a divorce from hell, at the end of which most of my family and friends thought I should have received an honorary social work degree. The beauty of these changes, or opportunities as I like to think of them, eventually became apparent to me. Not only did I have the lesson change is inevitable seared into my psyche, but I also gained so much capacity and perspective. I expanded my network. I became way more independent. And I'd like to think a little bit funnier. Ultimately, I became highly motivated to find ways to share my learning to help others. I had unexpectedly become a magnet to other people who were navigating various changes or stuckness. So I thought it was time to go pro. I became a certified coach and then a certified divorce coach. And I combined it with my legal background and my own life and professional experience. I wanted to help others manage change, limit their divorce stress, avoid common mistakes, save money, and help them create healthy and happy futures for themselves and their kids. I mean, 40% of Canadian marriages end in divorce, and that's rates higher in the US. In fact, divorce is ranked as the second most stressful event out of 10 that can happen to you as an adult. And I don't need to tell you, it is hard for a lot of people. A quick succession of changes and setbacks in my late 20s and early 30s that could have easily robbed me of my equilibrium and left me stranded in a yucky place for a really long time actually propelled me into this new, cool, empowering direction. Would I have wished what happened in my life on anyone I cared about? Not in a million years. I wouldn't even wish it on someone I disliked a lot. But by accepting that change is inevitable and overcoming my own fears of the unknown and the future, I really did become the person that I am now. The icing on the cake? Those changes fueled me to explore other avenues. I did a TEDx talk called "With This Prenup, I Thee Wed." And my goal there was to shift people's thinking about using premarital agreements as a planning tool rather than a weapon to help them strengthen their relationships from the get-go. And if things did go sideways and end in divorce, a prenup could at least help them and their families reduce stress and save money. That led me to finish another cool adventure I had started during my healing and learning journey, a dive into deconstructing happiness, and my first published book. I was motivated by a belief that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger and funnier, and that happiness is not a restricted club. So I wrote a book called YOLO, Essential Life Hacks for Happiness. And like the TEDx, the book became another vehicle for me to use my experience and training to share solutions with more people, not just my own family and friends and clients. There were plenty of other opportunities I also embraced. We won't talk about the experiment with salsa dancing because that one didn't turn out so well. Would I have done all of those things had I not gone through the changes I did? I doubt it. Though there was plenty of pain and sadness and grief and anger and confusion, you name it. I looked for the positive opportunities, and I was grateful to at least recognize and act upon some of them. And equally grateful for the support and mentorship I received from some pretty amazing people throughout the whole process. Now, with all the changes brought upon by the pandemic, I've been able to return to some of those happiness hacks. Hacks usually refer to shortcuts or skills to increase productivity and efficiency. Happiness hacks are meant to simplify happiness without being simplistic. I don't think you need to be gleeful 24/7 to be happy. It's more a way of being rather than just a state of being. My change management training taught me that happiness isn't about avoiding problems or setbacks or insecurities or changes like the ones we face now. It's more about knowing how to approach these changes, being intentional about your life and what it has to offer. Accepting that change is inevitable, except of course from a vending machine, has helped me avoid getting stuck for too long. And it moves me to a more empowering place, to look for ways not only to find my happy, but to maintain and protect it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vindy. That was an amazing journey through pieces and parts of your life and how you have adjusted, been flexible, adapted, and certainly has become what all of us would call your message in the world. So I know that we're all looking forward to hearing even more about the message called Your Life. And so at this point, what we would like to do is open it up for 3 or 4 minutes to have anybody ask any questions or a comment. And I hope some of you have done by writing something in the chat box in terms of a question that you would like to ask. So here's one, Vindy. How did you manage the extreme stress while going through these changes?
That's a great question. There were a lot of different things I did. I tried to hang on to my sense of humor for dear life. So that was one big one for me because it ended up being a huge coping skill. But I really leaned into things like self-care and building and leaning on my support network. I call them my board of directors. And so I was very careful who I surrounded myself with and who I sought advice from. And I think that that really helped me manage my stress a lot better. And I wasn't afraid to seek out sort of help that I thought I needed. So in the beginning, I sought out a counselor, and that was really quite informative and really helpful. And then when I was done with that, I went back to the gym, and that was really great because it got my endorphins going, and that's how I became interested in becoming a personal trainer. So I did a stint of that before I became a divorce coach. So I did a variety of things.
And
thank you for the question.
And Vindy, I know that one of the things you've done recently was the TEDx. So how did you get up one day and say, I'm going to do a TEDx talk? What inspired you to do that?
Well, Noel will have a big chuckle about this because I call myself the accidental speaker. because I went along with a friend to the information session that TEDx was hosting. And then I was captivated by everything everyone said. And I thought, hey, I think I could do this. And this would be really cool. And so I decided to apply. And my idea, I mean, I didn't want to get up and talk about divorce. That wasn't my goal. So I wanted to approach it from more of a preventative medicine or a proactive approach. And so I kind of went on the front end and thought, okay, how could I take my learning and sort of put it into an idea that was really positive? And so that's how the TEDx came about.
Beautiful. And what is the biggest lesson you have learned so far if you had to pick one lesson?
Oh gosh. Okay. This is a challenge for me. I don't like picking one thing, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be this acronym that I often use, and which I also talk about a bit in the book, which is QTIP. And it's an acronym that stands for quit taking it personally. And that was key for me because it moved me from the why me to, more like try me.
Beautiful. Okay, well, at this point, Vindy will also ensure that she has her information in the chat if anybody wants to contact her afterwards, or to actually be able to have a copy of her book, which is in that chat box now. And what I do know, Vindy, is that you definitely do not have a Corona cut. And that is known as a hairstyle during the pandemic. So glad that you've stayed away from that. You're so gorgeous, and all is well.
Thanks, Janet.
Thank you. So our next speaker for this evening is definitely somebody who I actually have met through another speaking group, but it was Noel who really inspired me, first of all, with what I would call intense, dry humor. I always think of Noel as a person who's not only such an eloquent speaker, but also forthright in his delivery. He's a very powerful writer, he's a humorist, and he also challenges and entertains audiences with his unique expression. And in that unique perspective, he has the ability to connect these ideas. And while he connects these ideas, he also brings a sense of offbeat humor. And so he was the MC for the last two TEDx Bear Creek Park events. He also currently, most recently, was the program coordinator for that event. And that was probably one of the last TED events that happened before we were all down in lockdown. So we were very grateful for that. He also has launched a new public speaking venture, and he teaches photography and is also a serial volunteer. Now, he sent me the name of the speech he was going to have tonight, but surprise, he has changed that to a different, still concerning change, but a different point of view. So what's one habit that we can help and change our lives today with? Well, he has the answer. His talk is entitled, "Funny You Should Say That. The period and pause is important." Noel Bentley.
Thanks, Janet. That was that couldn't have been said more perfectly for an introduction to humor. And Vindy, thank you for setting that up too. You've actually kind of introduced my talk also, because during these incredibly challenging times for everyone, our physical health, our mental health are both at risk. And I don't know about you, but it's pretty easy to fall into some bad habits. I was speaking to a friend down at Save-On, and he informed me that the skids of wine that were coming in were flying off the shelves at a record pace, like they had never seen before. I don't know about you, but I've put on sort of a few of the pandemic pounds already, and can hardly wait to get back to a real gym to try and sweat those off. But now it's also the time that we can engage and try and create a positive habit. And I'll call it the humor habit. And it's a way of interacting with the world. It's a way of improving your mental health and enriching your life. Now, when I say humor habit, I don't mean watching humor, passively observing. It's about you doing something different. It's about the way you interact with your world. And I'm going to say this from personal experience. It's been decades, just decades, where I've been battling with depression. And quite frankly, the ability to use humor is a lifeline. I know that's not really news for a lot of people, but it's my personal endorsement that humor is incredibly important to our well-being and mental health, but not just passively. If you can incorporate it, you can get so much more out of developing your humor habit. First idea is the idea of, that's one way of looking at it, because there's always more ways of looking at something. If you speak to someone who does comedy for a living or writes a lot of it, you'll notice that if you speak to them long enough, they have a little bit different way of observing the world. You may look at the same scene, you may be watching the same people, they're just seeing another facet. And it's really just like creative thinking or lateral thinking, the ability to see something a little bit funny. Everywhere, everything we see has the potential for that. It doesn't have to be 24/7, but the ability to look at things differently is also the ability to pull yourself out of ruts of thinking, which is incredibly important if you have any challenges with depression or anything else in the mental spectrums. So get yourself out of your comfort zone, have fun with it. That's the big point, is it's something to play with, and you can do it at any time. You can start it tonight. You can look at the speakers and go, what animals do these people look like? And imagine them in that way. Just, have a little fun with it. I'll give you one example that I've been saddled with. I've been told I bear a resemblance to a very famous internet celebrity. I don't know if you've seen her before, but this is a puppet of Grumpy Cat. I don't know about the resemblance, but, I'll live with it. She's like a muse to me. Have some fun with it. That's the entire idea. And once you're looking at things a little differently and it's starting to flow for you, you're starting to see the fun, the humor, the absurdity, whatever you can find in this world, especially times like this. This is your phone. Most everyone has it, or at least a notebook. Take those ideas and write them down. Snippets of conversation that are hilarious that you hear around you, write it down. That ridiculous sign. I was in a restaurant, and on the menu, I think they intended it to be Hunan beef. However, they put human beef. And when I asked them if they had a side of Soylent greens, they had no idea what I was talking about. But anyway, those things happen almost every day. And you'll notice that comedians almost exclusively talk about things that are rooted in their everyday life, things that we can all relate to. So it's all around you. Collect them. If you do any writing, if you do any speaking, you might already have your ideas. But a separate humor file can be, it's so key. People will often ask, where do you get all your ideas? Well, they're in my phone. I might not do something for 3 years, but when it's ready to go, it kills. And then you don't have to create everything or feel on the gun when you need to pull out some humor for something. So now that you're looking for humor, now that you're noticing it and noting it and writing it down, I've got a phrase for you. And it actually completely applies to Vindy's situation as well, or her past. Remember to say, well, I can laugh or I can cry. Once life becomes that stressful, once you're really in danger, humor actually becomes a very powerful tool to bring you out of it. You are completely primed to laugh when things are their most stressful, when they're the most crazy. What does laughter do for us? It's a release of tension. It's a way to actually take back a little bit of control in your life if you can make fun of it. I mean, it's the perfect explanation for the dark jokes that circulate during tragedies. I don't really truly believe people intend disrespect on a whole. We're just trying to find ways to cope. There are better ways to do it. I'll give you an example of when I could see the tension being needed. Or breaking the tension. It was a wonderful family experience. There's a wedding. My wife and I are very involved. We're helping out. Now it's the day of the wedding, so everything's coming to a head. I've been asked to be the MC, and I've never really done that before. This is 12 years ago. I'm terrified, the stress builds. So we're rushing through, I think it was the airport, the Calgary airport, trying to pick up a few items. And I noticed in the toy store, there was this little character. I don't know if you can see this guy. And I just bumped him for fun. And I got this. All right, Mr. Giggles. Now, we laughed for about 2 minutes straight. We had tears coming down from our eyes. People were looking at us like we're insane. But that was fine. We just needed that release. The wedding was awesome. I had fun as the MC. It really helped. I really learned a positive lesson about why humor is going to let you release. But you have to be willing to do it. And you have to remember it when it's darkest. And sometimes that's when you need a friend that you really trust that can help you with that. And the last item, the last one I'm going to ask you to do, I want you to fail. I really want you to fail several times, because when I talk to people about using humor, often that's what they're most concerned about. When a joke doesn't land, they feel terrible inside. And let's be honest, no one really cares. Truly, it's not a big deal. No one remembers those times. But when you have a great moment of humor, it's something that can connect you with other people. Think of using humor like golf. When you first try golf, it's one of the most awkward human things you can ever do, the way you have to place your hands. You cannot hit it straight. You are putting people's lives in danger, and you are swearing at a rate that you didn't know you were capable of. But then, on one of those holes, you hit the ball 200 yards, straight down the fairway. And then the next day, you book another tee time with your friends. It's about remembering your successes. Yeah, sure, you have all those flubs and you slice it most of the time, but what really matters is when you hit it properly. And it's the same with humor. Just remember those times when you get those fantastic laughs. It can become a little bit of like a drug and addicting, but it's a really positive drug. And I'll say that these ways of interacting with the world when we're dealing with this has been, frankly, quite important to me. As I said, I was dealing with depression. And one of the ways that people have anthropomorphized it or talked about it is like the black dogs of depression. You hear them circling, you know they're coming, and you start to feel awful, and you get all of these negative emotions start. I don't know if it was Churchill or someone before that had used this analogy. And I had latched onto it and blamed these external dogs for what was happening to me. And eventually you realize that it's not them, it's you. It was completely me. Once I acknowledged what I was doing, when I was giving away my power and my ability to make choices, it allowed me to see things completely. I was freed. Now, what I've decided they are is the black cats of depression, which is far more appropriate for what they really are. Cats are a little harder to train. They come and go as they please. If you don't bug them, they won't bug you. And if they curl up on your lap, maybe they're just telling you you need to just take a break. And that's how I changed my life with the humor habit. And I'm suggesting that anyone else and everyone else can do so, especially to appreciate this amazing, confusing, and beautiful world. And with that, thank you.
Hi, and welcome back, everybody, after that wonderful, wonderful talk by Noel Bentley. If you have any questions or comments, I would ask that you would put those in the chat box so that we can ask a couple of things of Noel. And what a great message about the importance of humor. And I think that's one of the reasons, as we spoke earlier, that Mr. Thorne, the linguist, put together these 1,000 words that have been created during COVID. So here's a couple of other ones. One of the words is a coronication, which is a cessation of study or work due to the pandemic, viewed as a holiday. And the other one is drivecation, a holiday typically in a motorhome or an RV in one's own driveway. Wow. I haven't done that yet, but who knows? So at this point, we have a couple of questions and comments for Noel. Noel, when was the first time you remembered that humor actually engaged people?
The first time?
Yeah, or the
Yeah.
second time.
Or
You know,
second time,
yeah.
when I figured it out.
Yes.
You figure that out when you're a teenager and you want to start dating. I'm not very tall, so it puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage. But I realized that that old saw about women enjoying a sense of humor is actually true. The guys do too, but hey, it's that's when you realize that as a teenager, it could be used to get things that you want.
And another question here is, what was that experience of being an MC for those 13 TEDx speakers? You've done it twice now. What did you learn from that experience about humor and the importance of humor?
That's, wow, I love that. I learned two things, two big things. One was that the first time around, I didn't do a very good job, in my opinion, when I look back at it. And so, as in point 4, let's call it a fail. No biggie. Did my best, didn't work. One thing I realized about humor is that it's easy sometimes to go a little too crazy, a little too fast. You start simple, you engage with people before you go off. It's kind of like one of those rules in improv. Always start simple. Always build from there, because if you go crazy first off, you got nowhere to go. And I realized the second time around, it was a very different venue. We had, 7 times the people, we're bumping up to 900, a much bigger stage. I would say the stakes were higher. And for some reason, having been through that whole process and failing and saying, that's okay, this is what I've learned, I was far more prepared. I simplified my humor and tried to make sure that it engaged with the audience rather than engaging with me. And I think that made the whole difference. And it was fun to even do something on the spur of the moment once the crowd was on my side, I felt. And that was the point where I put on the sequin jacket. And that was just a good load of fun. I think we all learned a lot that day. And it was nice to watch, last point, was to watch Mason, the 12-year-old, have a moment where something didn't go right and he made the audience laugh. Brilliant.
So to put that into context, at some point in the TEDx talks, he did don a beautiful sequin jacket, and he did a Saturday Night Live impression, and it was hilarious. And Mason was the young boy who gave such a beautiful, beautiful message about our global family and change, and how we need to change what we're doing so that things do not become so much of a habit that we forget that there's something new to learn. So we'll now begin with our last speaker, and our last speaker also was on the TEDx stage. He is a very extraordinary person in his own right. He is originally from Scotland, and you may notice when he begins to speak that he definitely has a brogue that I think you'll really enjoy. Very melodic voice. Wayne, or I call him Dr. Wayne, is a family physician, a clinical assistant professor at UBC, and author who has dedicated his life to finding solutions for people suffering chronic pain. He quit his regular medical practice after 17 years to provide services that offer scientifically proven effective treatment methods for people in pain. He believes that all people in pain deserve to know why they have the pain and how they can be empowered with just some small changes, and sometimes big changes, on the journey of healing by finding solutions for this crippling condition. Heart-centered, beautiful mind, a soul that reaches far and wide. And now, with his talk entitled, Slow Down, Stop, Reflect, Enduring These We're Thriving in Times of Change. And here we go.
Well, thank you, Janet. Most kind words, and it's been a great privilege to be invited here tonight, and it's been great to be again on the stage with Noel and Vimy. And yeah, I love the talk that Noel presented with humor. It is the best medicine after all, and what a beautiful message and different ways to incorporate that in our life. But tonight's theme, as you know, is how do we thrive in these times of change? Well, as the saying goes, you know, there's only a few things in this life that is constant. And we have taxes, we have death, and of course we have change. So change is part of us. And what better time in our history than now, when the whole world is slowing down and has been forced into a change that I hope will see fruits that are beyond our comprehension at this time. But when you think of life, you know, change, it's in the seasons. Every year we go through the seasons, often not even thinking about them, but they're always happening. Every day, 24 hours, we have the sun and the moon and the rotation of the earth. We have change. And for the ladies in the fertile area, in the fertile times of their life, they know very well about change as their progesterone and estrogen levels rise and fall throughout the cycle. Us men have no idea what that is like, but they're changing all the time. But the question is, how do we thrive in this time? Well, 3 things I've learned recently, and it is important, it is essential in order for us to thrive, is to slow down, is to stop, and then reflect. So I'm going to take 3 different examples, 3 different areas of our lives, and we're going to dive in a little bit and see how we can apply these to our life so that we can thrive. The first is ourself, our individual path. I wonder how you've been doing in these last 4, 5, 6 weeks with shutdown. It's been challenging, as Noel has been saying. You know, if you've got challenges, mental health challenges, they will be arising even more. If you've got physical challenges, you know, we may be putting on a few more pounds. In many ways, we're being challenged. And even myself, in the last 24 hours, you know, I had an epiphany that, you know what, after COVID, it's not going to slow down. It's just going to keep going and going, and even more crazy than it is right now. The emails are going to come in. I don't know about you, but my emails are doubling, and they're a lot more intense. And oh my gosh. And I'm getting stressed with these emails. I think, well, you know, Wayne, we need to slow down and just pause, because underneath the stress of the mental mind or the emotional aspect of us, we have a soul and a spirit that is peaceful, that is joyful. It's where our heart resides, the love that's within us resides. And when we slow down and stop and reflect, we can tap into that. And we can allow the fountain of joy to come up. And we can do the simple things like the email that we need to do with joy in our heart. So take that and run with it yourself. How could you just stop and change how you're doing things within your own life? Second, relationships. Life is about relationships. You know, we all have them in different shapes and form. And when we think about our loved ones, what an example and what an opportunity COVID has given us to be more connected to them. One story that came to mind was a good patient of mine who was sharing a little bit of this, and how in the summer coming up, she's not going to jump onto the itinerary for her kids to go to camp, because every year when they go to camp, it's because they can't literally function in the same house. But COVID has been able for them to slow down and connect and share and really be real with each other. And what's come is a beautiful connection, like returning to the good old days before IT was here, and the good old days before even locomotive cars were here, when we just sat and were together with each other, and we can heal, we can learn, we can laugh, we can literally grow and thrive like we used to many years ago. So that's the second area. And the third area, our larger community. Now, it's obvious, everything is changing. Everything is changing. And in the concept of this COVID, I'd like to reflect back 100 years, because the Spanish flu was doing the same thing around the world. And it's important to remember the island of Iceland and the capital Reykjavik. And in that time, half of the population died at this time. And it was a somber time, but it's easy to forget. It's easy to move on. And the biggest thing that helped the Spanish flu was fresh air and sunlight. And it's important in this time when we think of our environment that we go outside and we enjoy nature. We should just be in nature. Go for that walk. At the weekend, a few days ago, I spent time in the woods with my kids, and they just ran and they had fun. And we looked at all those painted stones with all these positive statements like, I love you, just sprawled all over the forest floors. And it was a beautiful moment for me, realizing the healing power of nature. And isn't it interesting, when we are in nature, we just feel better? And the reason for that is we are one with nature. When you go to the quantum level, the energetic level of this world, we're all connected. And I think that's the reason why we feel better when we're outside. So I encourage you, go outside, go for a walk. And if you can't walk too far, just step out the door and breathe in the fresh air. Sunlight and nature are here to help us. And this is 3 ways that we can thrive: in our individual life, in our relationships, and also stepping outside and taking in the goodness of the thing that we are, which is nature. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Wayne. As a doctor and a person who's committed their life as a frontline worker, first of all, we honor that, and we honor that that you are doing such good in the world. And we're all very grateful for that. If anyone has any comments or questions, if they could put that in the chat box now. But to start with, other than nature, what inspires you, and how has that inspiration caused a change sometime in your life?
I think the biggest inspiration for me in the last 2 months has been the introduction of my children living with me again after a period of about 10 months. And it was the biggest, most important thing I think I've learned in the last year is the importance of connection with our loved ones. Because when something so dear to you is taken away, and it's reintroduced. You know, you go through that times of depression and that doubt and anxiety. And when you come to the end of a journey where you're reunited, not just reunited, but connecting in a special new way, realizing the beauty of each individual child and the gifts that they have for the world, and the importance of just cherishing that and just being there. I think that is inspired me to continue to be open to whatever's coming in our life, because we don't know what's around the corner. But always be open and be curious and be accepting, and just know that everything has got a bigger purpose. And if we're open for that, then we'll begin to see it. It may take a while, but we'll begin to see it. And there are solutions for pain. There are solutions that are going to come out of this COVID that is beyond our understanding right now. And I do believe that this world will benefit from this very challenging time.
So, Wayne, you have 3 clinics that help people deal with chronic pain. So at this time, there are certain restrictions. So how are you assisting people right now who are in chronic pain to make the changes that they need to do, with the fact that we have a whole different paradigm in having to be at home more and not so much? How are you doing that, or what are you doing?
Yeah, currently we're in lockdown, so I'm unable to go to my office. So I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone 4 days a week, and I have my schedule, and I log in online, and then I phone my patients. Most consultations are by phone. Some are through telehealth. There was 1 or 2 with Zoom. But, you know, what I've learned in that time is the importance of just slowing down, like the talk today, really slowing down and listening. And not maybe have a agenda in my own mind of what I should talk about, but just wait and listen to see what they're going to say. Because I think we're all teachers in our own right. You know, we've all got to learn from one another. And I'm learning from them as they go forward in their own life. And by just listening and giving some advice on certain areas of life, it's been such a rewarding experience. And it builds on something else that I'm doing with online clients, spending an hour with them, a whole hour every week for free service. And that's been an amazing journey, because you really get to know people and you see where the issues may be in their mental life or their emotional life or their physical life. And it's way easier to help people once you understand what's going on. And it's been such a heartfelt experience and growth for me as an individual, as a physician, and also traveling the path of a healer, helping this world in this way. So I'm very humbled by this experience.
Thank you so much, Wayne. And Wayne will also put in the chat his contact in case anyone does want to connect with him. And also, we just also want to take time to just thank again Unity of Vancouver for just allowing us to have this time together to connect, to be conduits for one another, and to communicate in new ways. So we appreciate everybody that's here on our evening tonight and in our evening tonight, and immersing ourselves together as one global family. So we are now going to take a little bit of a break, and what that means is if you could just take a couple minutes and get yourself a drink of water, or you know, if you need to take a fluid intake release, you can do that as well. And then we'll come back here in 2 minutes to get started, and we'll put you in the breakout groups, and we will have a chance to have some conversation at that time. So 2 minutes, if you could all come back, and we will have our time together in our small breakout groups.